Welcome to the Hour of the Time. If you like amateur radio, if you've ever dreamed of having your own radio station, folks, stay tuned. You're going to love tonight's Hour of the Time. Well, if you've been listening to this program on a regular basis, you know exactly what you're expected to be, where you're expected to fit in, when you can talk and when you can't, because that's the purpose of this program, is to educate you, enlighten you. You are not to believe anything that you hear on this show, or from Dan Rather, or from George Bush, or from your own mother, unless you can verify it through your research. We're going to talk tonight about a man who refuses to fit into the category of, and we quote once again, a nation or world of people who does not use their intelligence are no better than animals who do not have intelligence, and thus are beasts of burden and stakes on the table by choice and consent. Unquote. Where do you fit in? Are you one of the sheeple? Well, Bill, did you give up?
Not at all. Not even thinking of giving up. The fight is only beginning.
Well, you heard it, ladies and gentlemen. I can tell you that that's absolutely true. This is one man who's made up his mind that he's not going to buckle in to apparent violations under color of law from a government agency of the federal government, and in this specific instance, the Federal Communications Commission. The man, well, I'll let him introduce himself and tell you what he's been doing and some of his background so that you'll know who you're talking to.
My name is Bill Dougan, and I'm owner of Arizona's only unlicensed, low-power FM radio station. And I have absolutely no background in broadcasting at all, which is, I think, a plus, because I can't make all the mistakes the broadcasters have made. I have this rather naive and sensational idea that the airwaves belong to the public, in this sense, for my station at least, and the people should be able to come forth and speak on the radio, uncensored, and that's what my station's all about.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your background. What do you have?
No, my background is I've been in the graphic arts field for 20 years, offset printing, copying. Has nothing to do with radio at all. This is something that, in my college years, I did a brief stint at a college radio station, and I suppose when I was a teenager I had a fancy with radio, but I decided I didn't want to live out of a suitcase all my life. I wanted to fix myself somewhere and have a house and have all the things that you know, normal people want to have. I didn't want to work in Chicago today and New York City tomorrow. I didn't want to be dependent upon ratings, which people in radio are, so I opted out of a career in commercial broadcasting and went on my way for the last 20 years to just work and be happy. And then I kind of got back into the broadcasting. The broadcasting issue itself is kind of a side to the major issue, and that is citizens claiming their rights under the Constitution, and that's what this whole battle is going to be about. And the broadcasting aspect of the whole scene is just a vehicle for putting this claim forward. But I'm definitely dedicated to the radio station. It's not something I'm going to give up tomorrow. It's coming back on the air probably within 30 days, and the fight against the federal government is just beginning. Just beginning.
Well, what you just stated as your goal is certainly the goal of this radio station. One of the things that I try to do is wake people up let them know that they're sheeple instead of people.
Oh, yeah.
And try to get them back on track, claim their rights, reclaim their status, so that we can reclaim our country before we lose it, and we're rapidly losing it. Before our listeners get too confused, you weren't broadcast. You didn't have anything to do with radio, and all of a sudden you decided to build a radio station.
All of a sudden I decided to build a radio station, and dare I say this for fear that it be considered a commercial plug, but it's literally the radio station that Radio Shack built, because I went to my neighborhood store and I bought everything I needed to build my own radio station in my backyard.
Well, one of the things we're going to talk about on this show is a mistake that you just made. You said it might be a commercial plug. Now, since you've been talking to me for the last few days, why is that a mistake?
Because the crux of this issue has to do with interstate and intrastate commerce, and whether the federal government has the authority to regulate a wholly intrastate radio station.
Also, previous to this, you and other people like you who dabble in radio and low-power stations and things like that, call yourselves traditionally pirate radio.
I have shied away from the word pirate from the beginning because it definitely has a negative connotation, and it is an uphill battle to fight this, because in the news media reports on my station, the word pirate is the first thing that pops up, and no matter what you do to try to get them to, abandon that term and go after low-power FM broadcaster or even unlicensed broadcaster, I have no problem with that. They like the word pirate, the media does, because it's catchy, but I've recently made a discovery about the word pirate, and that is the legal status of that word. I've been labeled now a felon by everyone who has called me a pirate, and I think I'm going to have some fun with that.
Yes. Under the common law, which the legal system of this country is based upon, if you do not claim your right, you do not have that right.
Correct.
So when you allow these media, newspapers, television, radio, whoever it is calling you a pirate radio station operator, when you allow them to do that, you are, in fact, by your passive consent under the law, that's what it's termed, passive consent. In other words, you did not object.
Right.
Therefore, by your passive consent, you're admitting that it's true under the law. You have to go after these people and sue them for libel, slander, whatever applies, because in effect they are stating in the newspaper to the community that you are a felon, a criminal under the law, by the use of the term pirate. And every radio station operator or ham operator out there who uses the term pirate to describe himself or herself is, in effect, admitting under the law that they are criminals.
That's very interesting, because just last week I had a gentleman call me from right here in Phoenix, and he's interested in putting together some sort of, I don't know exactly if it's a fundraiser or a media event of some sort. He wasn't really clear, for pirate radio broadcasters. And I blew him out of the water. I said, no way. Are you going to have to change the name or count me out?
Good.
Because those days are over. I have to admit, I certainly don't know all the answers, but I'm learning at light speed.
Good. Bill, when you decided to build your station, what did you do?
Well, the first thing I did was that I filed a declaration of intent to let everyone know what I was going to do and what my justification was for doing this, the legal argument. I didn't go into it in great detail, but I advanced it. I got it out there. I wanted everybody to know the station was going to be here. It was going to be on the air, because that was the whole point. It was a drawing point for the community to come forward and, speak on the radio. A lot of these, I'll call them low-power stations, they operate in the dark, covertly. They're on an hour here, an hour there. No one even knows they exist. I think the majority of the people who engage in this sort of operation do it more for ego than anything else, because they certainly don't have any listeners, unless they actually call their listeners up and tell them they're on the radio. I didn't operate that way. I went with as much publicity as I could get.
You were regularly scheduled station?
Regularly scheduled, 6 to roughly 10 or 11 at night, 6 nights a week. I even filed my declaration of intent with the Federal Communications Commission to let them know that here I am.
So you sent this declaration of intent not only to the F.C.C., but to the news media?
The news media.
Did you send it to any state agencies?
No, I don't think I sent it to any state agencies, mostly to the media, because I figured the way to get the most publicity would be to go with the media. Too many state agencies, they would look at it and they wouldn't even know what you're talking about. They would ignore it.
Because the state, like most people, is really, in some instances, a sheeple and don't understand that interstate
They don't know the difference between inter and intra.
Intrastate, non-commerce broadcasting could fall under state control if state decided to exercise their 10th Amendment rights.
Correct.
And take control. But as far as I know, there's no state agency in Arizona that regulates or licenses intrastate, non-commercial, or non-commerce, non-common carrier radios.
If there's an agency out there, it's very well hidden because I haven't been able to find it.
Okay. So, but the important thing is that you sent this declaration of intent to the F.C.C. and you never heard a word from them.
Not a peep.
Not a peep. Okay, so they did not reply. And you actually went on the air for how long?
5 months.
5 months. You were on the air, no problems.
No problems.
As far as you know, there was no complaints from anybody.
The biggest problem in my mind was that the station was not, in my mind, it was not being as successful as I wanted. I felt it was being ignored. Right up until the very last day. I got a little media coverage here and a little media coverage there, but there wasn't the outpouring of community support that I envisioned, which didn't really bother me. Being driven by ego somewhat, I decided to keep on going, but then lo and behold, on one night, all hell broke loose. So apparently people were listening out there somewhere.
Well, if somebody's always listening.
Someone's always listening, yes.
But the main point is you broadcasted for 5 months. You didn't get any complaints.
No.
As far as you know, nobody made any complaints.
No, and the important point to make here is, technically, there's no complaints that anyone can lodge because I built this station as methodically as anyone would build a full...
Not so. Because most Americans, you see, being sheeple, believe that the freedom of speech only applies to them. And if you are not espousing the view that they particularly believe in, then they will complain and they will do everything to shut you down, not realizing that in doing that to you, they're also shutting themselves down.
But the important point is, at least for my argument with the commission, is that I built this station very clean. There was no technical interference to any other licensed radio station, and that is a crucial point in my argument. I stepped on no one, so to speak. I interfered with no other stations. I did a frequency search. I did my own engineering surveys, which kind of amazes a lot of people because there's this aura about radio out here that it's some sort of hallowed or sacred field that only these specialists know how to make it all work. And it's a nuts and bolts operation, just like a gas station on the corner or a discount store. You plug in all the parts and you fire it up. There's no mystique there at all. Anybody can do it if they just use the brains.
So what happened?
Well, along about the middle of March, I received a knock at the door. And lo and behold, there were 2 agents from the Federal Communications Commission.
And when you opened the door, what happened?
Well, it's just like you see on television. Here's these 2 goons in their $300 suits waving their official-looking badges and announcing that they're from the Federal Communications Commission. And they wanted to talk to me about my radio station. And the door was slammed in their face. And the radio station kept right on broadcasting.
Well, that's not what most people do. Why did you close the door in their face?
Because they had no authority to even be on my property, let alone to demand the inspection of my radio station.
Did they have a warrant?
They had nothing. I didn't even get a business card. Nothing.
So they were Federal Communications Commission agents.
So they said.
Who wanted to inspect your radio station, and so they said they didn't show any identification?
Other than this badge, which in the nighttime hours, could be anything.
Well, of course. You can go down to spy headquarters and buy one of those badges, can't you?
Yes.
They're obligated